If you've ever done rock climbing, some of the first things you need to identify is where to put your hands, where to grab hold, how to manage it, and how to navigate a path with handholds. A diagnosis is nothing more than a handhold. It helps us know where to grab, it helps us know how to plan a path, it helps us know how to navigate.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Gretchen Rowe for the Demi Learning Show, and it is my very great pleasure today to welcome Dr. Patty Stout to join us for this conversation about children who learn differently. I am so excited to make her acquaintance via video. I know you'll be excited for what she'll have to say today. I walk in the special needs world because I believe that there is no such thing as special needs. We all have special needs, but many of us learn differently. And I want to see that the playing field is leveled. So I've invited Dr. Stout here today to help us do that. And I'm going to let her introduce herself.
I usually just say I'm Patty and then I'm done. But I think maybe we need a little more information. I'm Patty and I'm happily married to Paul for 45 years. And we started on our homeschool journey when our oldest was in kindergarten. It was kind of a last minute, the week before school starts. I do not recommend that you do that because we had signed him up for the local Christian school. The district contacted us in Pennsylvania. The district provides transportation no matter where you go to school. And they said, "Oh, we're going to put your kindergartner on the high school bus." So we said, "Well, maybe not," and decided maybe homeschooling. Can he cut? Can he know his shapes and colors, kindergarten stuff? So we decided to do that for a 1 year experiment. And 20 years later, we ended our 1 year experiment when we graduated our youngest. And as we took the journey along, the Lord allowed me to use my teaching certificate. I have a teaching certificate for Pennsylvania for early childhood education and deaf education, K through 12. And in Pennsylvania, the law requires each family to see a certified teacher or someone else that matches the qualifications listed in the law for a year-end evaluation, which is basically a portfolio review. And so while I was at home with my children, I was able to say, I have a teaching certificate. Come on to my house and play with my kids and celebrate your year. So now that was 29 years ago that I began that. And I've met amazing people along the way. Partway through that journey, the Lord told me to go back to school. So at 50, I went back to college to get my doctorate through Liberty University. And my focus, here's my dissertation. Haha, I got it out. It's
Oh,
nice and thick.
wow.
um, I got to interview 30 families for homeschooling children with special needs under the specifics of the Pennsylvania law. And so I have the honor and privilege to work with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homeschoolers. I do quite a bit of testing in North Carolina, where my son lives, and I do evaluations and testing here in Pennsylvania and some other places along the way. But I guess that's about it. Last week I finished 415 homeschool portfolio reviews here in Pennsylvania. So I'm tired.
I bet you are. My goodness. 415. That is quite a record. That is amazing. But by reputation, it has been interesting because when I talk to homeschool families, so many of them know you or know of you. And so I'm just excited to have this conversation today. And we have so many things I would like to talk about. Um, Maybe the best place to begin is how do you feel? How is it advantageous for a family to homeschool a child who learns differently?
Show me a child that doesn't learn differently.
I, I knew I could count on you to say that.
And so we should, I mean, if God calls you to homeschool your child, he teaches us in his word to teach our children when we walk by the way, when we rise up, when we lie down. So which of us is are not homeschooling? It's just some of us part-time homeschool and some of us full-time homeschool. But we all start with homeschool when we're teaching them to potty train and all that other fun stuff. We just some of us continue it on a more academic road afterward. So but as far as children with special learning needs and the vocabulary in this field, changes regularly, and I can promise you I am not politically correct. I do love every single individual as an image bearer of God. So forgive me if I do a faux pas with my vocabulary. When I was doing my research for my dissertation, I came across one term that I really fell in love with, and that is special education needs, a child with special education needs. And so I use the term SEN. I don't turn it into a word. I just type SEN when I'm dealing with, like, I'll say SEN approval. Oh, in Pennsylvania, we need to have a pre approval for the objectives for a child with SEN, special education needs. So,
I like that. That because that defines what we're talking about without quantifying the individual, which is really awesome.
and which of us doesn't have strengths and weaknesses in our learning? Some of the things I found in research, why your original question before I got snarky on you was, what would be some of the advantages or reasons why it might be positive or advantageous to homeschool a child? Well, some of the reasons I found in my research through educational theory were that there's a man that I learned I love. He's an educational theorist from Russia from back in the early 1900s named Lev Vygotsky. And part of his theory is the idea of private speech. Now, if I say something to you, everybody out there in podcast land, I want you to instantly say out loud wherever you are, what comes next. Ready? I before E.
Except after C.
Okay. The only reason you can do that is because someone had you practice private speech, mental rehearsal, whatever you want to call it, brain practice. And that's a really strong educational practice. But not all of us can sit and say everything out loud when it comes to mind when we're in a classroom with 25 students. However, at home, it's very normal for us to talk to ourselves.
Sure.
And so one of the advantages is to be able to practice private speech. Another is to be able to get up and walk around and work with the wiggle. And I mean, there's just so many. But let's go to the very basis of special education. And that's a federal legal document called an IEP, an individualized education plan. How much more individualized can you get than homeschooling? I rest my case.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you talked about work with the wiggle. I think that's so important. There was a lot of times where academics were accomplished at my house with a child on a trampoline for the entirety of the lesson because that was where I could get their focus. And in fact, I have a coworker who says that one of her children said to her, "You have a choice at 7." He said, "You have a choice. I can move and learn, or I can sit still like you want me to, and I won't hear a thing you say." And he's a college student now, so obviously they made it work.
During my research for my dissertation, I came across Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It looks like Maslow, but
Right.
because it's Russian, it's Maslow. And he basically says we have to meet the child's basic needs of security and safety before we get up the pyramid on level 4 to start real learning.
Mhm.
And I had one student I interviewed, the mother I interviewed during my dissertation, and she said she sent her son with severe dyslexia and other learning disabilities to first grade. And she said, "You must behave and stay in your chair." So when he came home the first day, she said, "What did you learn?" He said, "I stayed on my chair." But what did the teacher say? "I don't know. I stayed on my chair." He was so busy focusing that safety bottom level of staying on his chair, he had no ability to take in information and process it in a learning capacity.
So I started my homeschool journey in 1995, kind of similar to you in the fact that I started in the middle of an academic year overnight because I didn't like the fact that the third grade school system said my daughter didn't need to memorize her multiplication tables, and I was like, hold the phone, that's wrong. Long story short, 21 years later, we have 4 homeschool grads. My 5th one was homeschooled until high school, and my last one was homeschooled up until middle school. And so, um, The point is how you get here doesn't really matter. It's that you're here. And now what are you going to do with it? So now what I'd like you to do is to talk about diagnoses, because in the last 10 or 12 years, I see more and more families who see a diagnosis as a limit and their children can't get past that limit. So I'm really anxious to hear you talk about how we can surmount that as parents attitudinally so we know how to serve our kids.
If you've ever done rock climbing, some of the first things you need to identify is where to put your hands, where to grab hold, how to manage it, and how to navigate a path with handholds. A diagnosis is nothing more than a handhold. It helps us know where to grab, it helps us know how to plan a path, it helps us know how to navigate. But it certainly is not a tattoo across the forehead that says, for the rest of my life, I have to have this label. A diagnosis helps parents, A, confirm or affirm their suspicions they've had all along. It's never a surprise. Unless you live in the river in Egypt called denial. Um, uh, Parents have a feeling. Now it is harder with the first child because you have nothing to compare with. But but if you've been around other children that have typical developmental milestones, you can kind of get a feeling something's going on here. A label should not be something to be feared or a diagnosis. It should be a handhold to know how to grab and how to plan a navigation path here forward. And so there's so many resources out there. One of the best ones out there is understood.org. And they have so many resources for parents to figure out, what does this diagnosis or label mean? And what are some good strategies to try to overcome the hurdles in front of my child? And the more hurdles we learn to navigate together, the stronger they are for adulthood. So we don't wanna avoid that, but we do wanna have a handle or a handhold to know how to best proceed. What is it I'm dealing with? What are some strategies I can research and learn? I'm not going now, some parents do experience guilt. Maybe I shouldn't have had that particular medication during pregnancy, or maybe I shouldn't have, or what could I have done? There's a grieving process when finding out your child has special needs. It's okay to grieve. The child didn't die. Usually we acknowledge grief as part of a death process, but some of our dreams might come crashing
Mhm.
down. So we grieve the changing of our dreams, the changing of our path, and then we embrace that child, still an image bearer of God. And we say, wow, I wonder what amazing things God has for this child's future. What do I need to do to back up, grab the handhold, and move forward on a new path?
I love that. I love your analogy of grabbing a handhold because information is power. I don't want to see it be limiting, because when we take that and we make it as a limit for ourselves, we're missing out on the best parts of our children's growing up, and they're missing out on their potential. You said that you do testing both in Pennsylvania and in North Carolina. So tell me a little bit more about that, because I think that's one of the hurdles that a lot of parents feel like, oh, my child wouldn't do well in testing, so I can't homeschool them because I'm afraid those tests won't reflect what they can do. Can you talk a little bit about that point of view?
In Pennsylvania, the homeschool law requires testing in grades 3, 5, and 8. Hint, 3 plus 5 equals 8, just so you can remember. But in North Carolina, families are required testing every year. Each state has a different law. So, first, you want to get to know your law. Second, you need to know, are there any limits as to what tests are given? Generally, they are nationally normed, standardized achievement test. Wow, was that a mouthful? And so, in order to pass the test to be able to use that test, you need to make sure it's a nationally normed, standardized achievement test. When we do testing, we always say, what's the purpose? And we choose an instrument that best meets that purpose. So, check the law first. Usually it's achievement tests. Usually it's not to hand in results, it's to keep them on file. Usually it's some kind of arbitrary way to say the child really is making educational progress. So instead of being measured against 25 other students in the classroom or hundreds in the school or thousands in the state, the child is really measured against himself. And we want to see measurement. So the people, here comes my pet peeve that say, just do it and get it done. Go on there and just click, 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 let the child click, 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 get it done to satisfy the legal requirements. Hey, if you want to throw your money away, it's all right. I don't know. But why not stop and say maybe there's some value here? And since I don't have to show anybody else in Pennsylvania, yes, the evaluator will see it, but pick an evaluator that will celebrate with you and not chide you. Uh, and so the testing that I give is called the Woodcock Johnson Tests of Achievement. It's a nationally normed, that means they gave the test to lots of children across the nation in the cities, out on the farms, all different ethnicities, all different age groups, all different ability groups, all different religious background groups. And so we can kind of get a general idea across the nation that students 6/10 of the way through fifth grade usually can answer these questions. And so it's a nice broad general thing. No, not everybody can function the same on a test. So I say, let's get a baseline for this child. And then let's see how this child makes progress from that baseline, measuring against him or herself. That's it. And will they know all the questions? No, I don't. And I've had 10 years of college and a couple degrees, but it doesn't matter. Those don't matter. But what does matter is, are the results showing what mom's seeing at home? Is mom seeing, I see a math struggle at home. He loves reading, he loves writing, but he really doesn't love math, or opposite. And the scores on a graph show, yay, loves reading, loves writing, hates math. Great. It's just affirming mom and saying, yeah, you've got a handle on this. You have a finger on the pulse. It should be an affirmation and a celebration, even if there's a little bit of disappointment, saying, I wish he were higher.
Another thing I think is always important for parents to remember is it's one day out of your child's life. Nobody has ever asked me any score that any of my kids ever got on an achievement test in the 12 years the 6 of them went through school. So,
For North Carolina, that's the truth. Now, I have a bunch of really amazing families down in North Carolina, which is interesting, who could go online and do one of the online tests, timed or untimed, probably a little less expensive than what I charge. But I hear that I charge about half the rate that some of the people in North Carolina, sorry people, down there charge. But but I'll go into the home if the parents invite me and sit there and get to know the family and just have fun and celebrate their life and their year and their amazing children. And it takes about an hour per child. Some of the older children take longer than an hour because they want to answer those deep, dark math questions that I don't understand. Um, but it's really untimed, it's flexible and relaxed. I can do it in the home environment where the children, especially children with special needs, are familiar and comfortable. There's so much flexibility, but there are other tests and there are other options. There's the pencil up, pencil down, color in the dots kind of test. The one I use has a flip chart and it's mostly interview. That's changing now. The new version that just came out is electronic, and I'm not crazy about it. But anyway, as long as they still produce for the WJ4, I'm going to keep giving the WJ4. But anyway, most of the states offer options of testing, and the one-on-one interview style tests are much less stress on the child than either online or booklets. Open your booklet, pencils up, like we've done when we were younger.
right. Well, and in all honesty, I actually homeschooled my kids when I lived in Maryland. My husband and I were lived in Maryland. I almost said something wrong, but lived in Maryland for 28 years. And my three oldest children and my grandchildren still live there. And we were not required to test in Maryland. but I had family members who were certain that I was not doing the right thing. So that test was the rubber stamp for me. And I was a certified Stanford tester. So we did pencil up, pencil down, fill in the bubble for a number of years. And I also know that nobody cared about those tests beyond the answers that we got in that particular year. So what would you say to a parent who, because I held these parents' hands who were just absolutely flummoxed over the fact that their child did not do well on an end of year achievement test. What do you say to them? Because I'm certain I really want to hear this.
First of all, I say, why are you testing at the end of the year? Now, some of the tests, depending on the test you choose, because it is a parental choice, do need to be year end because that's how they're normed. But the test that I give, I can test in the fall. And a lot of my families love to come to me during the fall because then they can do course corrections if there's not a really good match with the curriculum and the child's learning style. Just because it's mom's learning style and she likes that curriculum doesn't mean the child's best developing or thriving under that. So we'll have a chat. That was kind of where I was going with my last question and didn't finish it. Was part of the one-on-one test is the consultation that comes afterward. And I find out all the amazing programs and materials that these other moms discover. And then I can be a repository and say, hey, have you tried this one? Have you tried that one? So we can do a lot of cheerleading and coaching with the consultation that comes afterward. But to the question of those results, let's not get all upset and frustrated. Let's look at them as a measurement. And if you're going to do them every year, try to do them about the same time every year. But you don't have to wait for the end of the year unless you choose that kind of test. I don't know. It's hard for me to answer that. A lot of the questions about testing depend on which test you use. And I have a little bit of a bias towards the Woodcock Johnson.
But I think that's it's a terrific measure, and one of the things it gives you is information. Like you said in the very beginning, if you have information, you have a handhold and you know how to then adjust accordingly, which really does make a difference. So, what else do you want to share with our families today?
You shared with me some questions that parents had asked beforehand,
Yes.
and some of them were specific strategies or things, ideas to use with children with more significant special education needs, SENs. Somebody asked specifically about Down syndrome. Well, I've met a bazillion, not quite, children with Down syndrome, and each one is very unique, uniquely abled, unique limitations, unique frustrations. So again, that's hard to answer, but there is a nice program out there that some of my moms who have children with Down syndrome have shared me, and that's so happy to learn. But I don't know a lot about the program, but I hear that it works well. The other one I always recommend, and this has nothing to do with who is sponsoring this podcast, this show, and that is Matthew C. My first encounter with Matthew C was probably 28 years ago. And I had a mom who was a math major, and she had a boatload of children. I won't say numbers because it might help you identify some of my people. And I was testing her oldest four every year, and three of them were like miles ahead on the test, and one was miles behind on the test. And she came to me and said, I'm a math major. I know my math, but I don't know what to do with this child. I came across this thing called Matthew C. Should I try it? I said, why not? So she did. And from February till May, when I tested the child caught up, if there is such a thing. I mean, these are arbitrary references. The thing is, it teaches a different way to think math that's weird to some of us. And it has the blocks and the manipulatives. And I always say, use your blocks. I say it's Matthew C, not Matthew guess. And I talk that way for real. And so they said, can she use her blocks during testing? I said, well, last I saw, a block never gave anybody an answer. So yes. But the child came in after 3 months on the program, 3 years behind in scores from last year, and sat down with the blocks on the desk, never touched them. And with the confidence that she got and the new way of thinking math, scored on level. And I realize that that contradicts what I said earlier about what is delayed, what is on level, but it is a point of reference. And it is a point of measurement of progress. This child showed significant progress. So it's really not that one program, but finding the program that connects with the way your child thinks and learns. Or maybe, as one of my favorite phrases is, a casserole of programs that helps your child just learn to think it through, even if it means you making some changes, mom. And there's so many neat programs out there. The problem with going to a curriculum fair is everybody has every answer to every need you ever might have. And you can spend $1 million and have piles of curriculum and never use them all. So think it through carefully and ask lots of parents, what do you use? Did you always use it? What did you use before? Why did you change? Get some reasons behind it, how to think it through. You doing that will teach you how to help your child how to think it through.
I love that. And what you just said, actually, I would like you to address another thing that we often hear at conferences. And that is a parent who comes up to us and says, I need your help. My child is behind. Can you talk about that word? I don't like that word. That's one word I wish I could have every homeschool parent lose from their vocabulary. Tell me your perspective.
One of my favorite phrases is help me understand. So help me understand what you mean by behind. Behind on your expectations, behind on you're planning to enroll the child next year and you want to catch the child up to grade level. Help me understand what your expectations are and also where you're feeling pressure. What is your source of pressure? And then is it something we can back up and learn how to relax and embrace? Or is it a very real situation? You know, I have to go back to work next year. I have to re-enroll. Okay, then let's work with that. I helped to homeschool one of my grandchildren who has dyslexia. She was going to a very academic, rigorous school and pulled out for an unknown, undefined amount of time. And we chose to make curricular selections to parallel with the school in case we blended her back in, she would not be at a disadvantage. So we didn't have all the freedom to do all the creative homeschool stuff, but we had a reason. So help me understand your situation. What do you mean delayed, behind compared to what? What yardstick are you using to measure, and where's your pressure coming from?
Those are terrific questions for any parent to ask when they have a child that they perceive is not on par with their peers, because that really does make a tremendous difference. Okay, Dr. Patty, what else? What have I missed asking you about that I should have asked you about?
Can children with special needs graduate from high school? Should we graduate them at age 18 as a typical, or can we continue to homeschool till age 21 or beyond? The answer to those questions lies in your state. I happen to be in Pennsylvania. Some people really resent Pennsylvania's law, but Pennsylvania is the only state that offers a plethora of state recognized diplomas to homeschoolers. So, yes, I can help parents graduate their children with special needs with a diploma. But, everything is very individualized, like an IEP, but we don't need that because homeschooling is individualized. But what will the child need to commence to doing what's next? What does the child need to be equipped to commence? And let's get this child on an equipping program. And then can we graduate that child? Yes. There are some more rigorous academic diplomas that would be a challenge, but there are options other than that. And there's now, starting in back, I guess, 11 years ago, where how'd that happen? We have a supervisor issued diploma that the state will stand behind. Um, there's so many different options for graduation, which we could do a whole different program on. But it is possible to help children with special needs, again, depending on their individual needs, um, to graduate. Yes, we can legally continue to homeschool them under the paperwork parameters of homeschooling until they're 21. We could stop paperwork at 18. It depends on where you live and what your compulsory attendance laws are. But in all honesty, when are you going to stop teaching your children? I look at it as having a lifestyle of learning. William Shakespeare said, "The whole world is a stage." I don't know how his voice sounded. I didn't meet him. But Dr. Stout says, "The whole world is a classroom. Let's get out there and get learning. And let's have a lifestyle of learning. Let's not try to replicate a schoolroom in our house. Let's meet the child where the child is. Let's get familiar with what the child has already mastered, what he's not yet solid in, and where he needs to go that he hasn't started." Vygotsky calls that the ZPD, the zone of proximal development. And if we meet the child in that ZPD and strengthen him and scaffold him like they do with washing windows. All right, we already washed that. We need the support here to wash these windows. We don't need to worry about those windows yet. So there's so much there, all on Vygotsky and his theories. I mentioned him earlier with private speech, but that's real education. And let's meet each child where he is and take him to his next personal level.
I love it. As you all can see, Dr. Patty is just a wealth of information. I don't believe we've even begun to plumb the depths of what she could share with us and tell us. We'll have to invite her back again. I want to say thank you so much for being here today. This was a terrific conversation. And I really love the fact that you and I have connected on so many levels. It's gratifying to know that I'm out there talking to parents, saying a lot of the things that you say. And that makes me feel like, yeah, I do have a little bit of a good handle on this for parents. So that's amazing. Dr. Patty, thanks for joining us. Thank you to all of you who joined us today for inviting us into your living rooms. We appreciate it. We'll look forward to having you in our living rooms again soon. Thank you all so much. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We're glad to be a part of your educational community. You can help us grow our community even more by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show wherever you may be hearing this. Don't forget that you can access the show notes and watch a recording at demilearning.com/show or on our YouTube channel. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep building strong foundations for lifelong learning.